Someone is commenting everywhere about your status that you live like a, don't scroll. Pause right now, listen to this, because this message is for you and your heart needs this right now, and I know it feels strange how this keeps happening, how you post something simple, something honest, something that reflects where you are in life, and suddenly there's this presence, this energy, someone commenting, hinting, judging, finishing your sentence in their own way, as if they have authority over your story. And listen to this carefully, because the universe doesn't allow patterns like this without purpose. This isn't random, this isn't coincidence, this is a spiritual signal wrapped in human behavior, and the reason it's bothering you more than you want to admit is because it's touching a deeper layer inside you, a layer that's been awakening slowly, quietly, without applause. And don't scroll, because the moment you realize why this is happening is the moment their words lose power over you. You see, when someone comments everywhere about how you live, especially with a sentence that trails off like an insult or a label, it's rarely about you, it's about contrast, it's about the discomfort people feel when they see someone choosing differently, living honestly, not performing for approval, not apologizing for their pace, their solitude, their healing. And listen to this, because your soul already knows this even if your mind keeps questioning it. You are in a transition phase. A spiritual in-between, where you no longer resonate with who you used to be, but you haven't fully arrived at who you're becoming, and that space attracts attention, especially from people who feel stuck, and your heart needs this right now because part of you wonders if you're doing something wrong, if you should explain yourself, soften yourself, hide a little more, but the universe is saying no, this is not the time to dim, this is the time to ground. And if you've been seeing numbers like 11 right after reading a comment that made your chest tighten, that's alignment reminding you to come back to yourself. If 222 keeps showing up when you question your path, that's balance being restored. If 333 appears when you feel misunderstood, that's a sign that communication is being handled on a higher level than words. Don't scroll, listen to this, because soulmate energy is woven into this too, and most people don't realize that when you move closer to your authentic self, you don't just attract love, you attract observation, scrutiny, projection, and somewhere out there, your soulmate, whether you've met them or not, is drawn to the way you live quietly, intentionally, without needing validation, and that unsettles people who survive on commentary and comparison. And here's the emotional truth, the reason those comments sting is not because they're accurate, but because they're incomplete. They try to reduce a complex, evolving human into a stereotype, into a half-sentence, into a judgment that lacks context. And your soul resists that because it knows you are more than what anyone can summarize. And listen to this, because the universe wants you to understand the difference between being seen and being understood. Many people will see your life, very few will understand it, and not everyone deserves access to your truth. Don't scroll, because this is where spiritual awakening sharpens. Awakening doesn't always look peaceful. Sometimes it looks like being misunderstood while staying calm, like being talked about while remaining rooted, like choosing not to explain yourself to people who have already decided how they want to see you. And your heart needs this right now because silence can feel like weakness when you're being judged, but spiritually, silence is power when it's chosen consciously. And here's the part that feels almost prophetic: the more you refuse to react, the more clarity comes, not for them, but for you. And you may notice that lately your reactions are slower, your anger softer, your need to defend yourself weaker. That's not you losing strength, that's you gaining perspective, and signs from the universe are reinforcing this shift. Maybe your phone glitches when you're about to reply to a comment, maybe you feel suddenly tired of explaining, maybe a sense of calm washes over you after you choose not to engage. Those are nudges, gentle course corrections. And don't scroll, because this next part matters. People comment on your life when they feel threatened by your freedom, when your way of living highlights the parts of themselves they've ignored. And it doesn't mean you're perfect, it means you're honest, and honesty is confronting. And somewhere in all of this, there's also a mirror moment for you, an invitation to ask yourself, am I living in alignment with my truth, or am I still carrying other people's expectations? And your heart needs this right now because the answer to that question determines how much power their words will have. And here's where soulmate energy deepens. The person meant to walk with you will never try to label you publicly, diminish you casually, or define you loudly. They will recognize you quietly, respect your pace, and protect your dignity even in your absence, and the universe is using this situation to show you contrast, to sharpen your discernment, to make it crystal clear. What kind of energy belongs in your future and what doesn't, and listen to this, because the comments you're seeing now are temporary, but the clarity you're gaining is permanent, and if you've been noticing 444 lately, that's protection surrounding you. If 555 appears when you feel fed up, that's change preparing to move you forward, and don't scroll, because this is the cliffhanger part. Within the next few days, something will shift, either the comments will stop, or you'll stop feeling affected by them, and the second option is the real victory, because when you stop needing to explain your life, the universe steps in to validate it in ways that don't require words, through opportunities, through peace, through connections that feel safe and aligned, and your heart needs this right now because you're not here to live like a label, you're here to live like a calling, and the people who matter will feel that without needing commentary, and the people who comment will eventually fade into background noise, and I want you to breathe this in before this part ends. You are not being mocked by fate, you are being refined by awareness, and when the universe allows people to talk, it's often because it's preparing you to rise above the noise. So don't scroll, stay grounded, trust your path, because your life doesn't need anyone else to finish its sentence. Destiny is still writing it, and it's doing so very deliberately. Don't scroll. Stay right here and listen to this, because this message is still for you and your heart needs this right now, and what you're experiencing isn't just noise or coincidence, it's a moment of spiritual exposure that happens when someone begins living in alignment before the world is ready to understand it, and when people comment on your life, hint at it, judge it, trail off mid-sentence like they know something about you. What they're really reacting to is the energy shift they can't name, the quiet confidence that doesn't announce itself, the peace that doesn't beg for approval. And listen to this, because the universe always tests alignment by introducing outside voices, not to pull you off course, but to show you how anchored you truly are, and your heart needs this right now because there's a part of you that still checks those comments even when you pretend not to care. A part of you that wonders why your choices seem to bother people who aren't living your life, and the answer is simple but deep. When someone sees you choosing authenticity over performance, healing over pretending, solitude over chaos, it reflects the parts of themselves they've neglected, and reflection makes people uncomfortable, so they project, and don't scroll, because this is where awakening sharpens. Awakening isn't always light and calm. Sometimes it's realizing you can't be understood by people who haven't done the inner work, and that realization can feel lonely before it feels freeing, and the universe knows this, which is why it keeps sending reassurance in subtle ways, through timing, through repeated numbers, through moments of calm that arrive unexpectedly, and if you've been seeing 1111 right after feeling misunderstood, that's alignment whispering, you're exactly where you need to be. If 222 shows up when you doubt yourself, that's balance being restored between who you are and who you're becoming, and your heart needs this right now because you're learning a new skill, emotional sovereignty, the ability to stand in your truth without needing consensus, and that skill is essential for the next phase of your life, especially when it comes to love, because soulmate connections don't thrive in environments where you feel the need to explain or defend yourself, they thrive where you're already rooted, already whole, already at peace with your choices. And listen to this, the person meant to walk beside you will recognize your lifestyle not as something to comment on, but as something to respect. They won't need to label you because they'll understand you intuitively, and the universe is using this situation to teach you discernment, to help you feel the difference between attention that drains you and attention that nourishes you. And don't scroll, because this next part matters. The reason those comments feel unfinished, like they stop short of saying something direct, is because the people making them don't actually know you well enough to finish the sentence. They're guessing, projecting, filling gaps with their own assumptions. And your soul rejects that because you know your life is richer, deeper, more intentional than any outsider could summarize. And your heart needs this right now because you're being invited to stop shrinking yourself to fit other people's understanding, to stop over-explaining your choices, to stop editing your truth to make it more palatable, and that invitation can feel scary because it means letting go of approval. But listen to this, approval was never the currency you were meant to live on, alignment was, and alignment attracts its own kind of validation, quieter but more lasting. And signs will continue to guide you through this recalibration. Maybe you'll feel a sudden urge to clean your space, to unfollow certain accounts, to spend less time observing and more time being present. Those are intuitive nudges helping you protect your energy. And don't scroll, because here's where the emotional revelation deepens. The more you detach from other people's commentary, the more clearly you hear your own inner voice, and that voice is getting stronger, calmer, more confident, and it's telling you that you don't owe anyone a performance, an explanation, or a defense, and your heart needs this right now. Because there's a version of you emerging that doesn't flinch at being misunderstood, that understands not everyone is meant to walk with you, and that version of you is magnetic in ways you haven't fully experienced yet, and soulmate energy responds to that magnetism, drawn not to how loudly you live, but to how honestly. And listen to this. The universe often removes the need for validation right before introducing a connection that feels real, because real connection requires self-trust, and if you're still looking outward for confirmation, you won't recognize it when it arrives, and that's why this phase feels introspective, a little isolating, but deeply grounding. And don't scroll, because this is the cliffhanger moment, the one where you're being asked to choose how much power you give to voices that don't know your heart, and within days or weeks, you'll notice a shift. Either the comments fade into irrelevance, or your emotional response to them dissolves completely, and the second outcome is the true sign of growth. Because when external noise no longer disrupts your inner peace, the universe opens new doors effortlessly, and your heart needs this right now because you're not living like a label, you're living like someone who's awake, someone who's learning to trust their own rhythm, someone who's being quietly guided toward a life and love that don't require explanation. And as this part closes, I want you to sit with this truth: being talked about is temporary. Being aligned is lasting, and the universe never confuses the two. So stay grounded, stay open, don't scroll away from your own intuition, because what's forming in this stillness is stronger than any comment, and it's leading you exactly where you're meant to be. Don't scroll. Stay with me, listen to this slowly, because this message is still for you and your heart needs this right now, and what's happening beneath the surface is deeper than comments, deeper than words, deeper than what anyone thinks they know about you, because when people keep talking about how you live, when they keep circling your name, your status, your choices, it's often a sign that your life has crossed an invisible threshold, the point where you're no longer living unconsciously, no longer following a script handed to you by fear, family, or expectation. And listen to this: awakening doesn't always look like peace at first. Sometimes it looks like being misunderstood while staying centered, like being observed while remaining unbothered, like realizing that the old versions of you no longer exist for people to recognize. And your heart needs this right now because there's a quiet grief that comes with growth. The grief of knowing not everyone will come with you, not everyone will understand the silence you've chosen, the simplicity you're building, the boundaries you're holding, and instead of asking you directly, instead of trying to understand, some people choose commentary, because commentary is safer than curiosity. And don't scroll, because this is where the universe steps in gently but firmly, reminding you that you were never meant to be universally understood. You were meant to be deeply aligned, and alignment always looks strange from the outside. And listen to this: the reason the comments feel repetitive, like they keep showing up in different places, is because you're being mirrored, the same lesson arriving in different forms until it lands fully in your awareness. And that lesson is about self-definition, about choosing who gets to narrate your life. And your heart needs this right now because somewhere inside you, there's still a small reflex to explain yourself, to clarify, to soften perceptions. And the universe is teaching you restraint, not because you're wrong, but because your energy is valuable, and where you place your attention shapes your future. And if you've been seeing angel numbers like 717 or 818 when you feel especially reflective, that's wisdom and inner authority activating. That's the universe signaling that you're stepping into a more sovereign version of yourself, one that doesn't outsource identity. And don't scroll, because soulmate energy is woven into this stage more than you might realize. Soulmates are drawn to people who know who they are even when the world is confused, to people who can sit in silence without collapsing, to people who don't need external agreement to feel valid. and this phase you're in is making you visible to the right kind of connection while filtering out the wrong ones. And listen to this, the comments you're receiving are not obstacles, they're indicators, they're showing you which energies no longer resonate with your path, which voices belong to the past, and which silences are actually sacred, and your heart needs this right now because part of you may feel exposed, like you're being watched or talked about more than usual, but spiritually, exposure often comes before elevation, clarity before expansion, and the universe doesn't elevate what's still entangled in other people's opinions, it waits until you're rooted, until you can stand calmly even when misunderstood, and don't scroll, because here's the emotional revelation most people miss: the more you stop reacting, the more power returns to you. The more you realize that peace is not passive, it's chosen, it's protected, it's earned through self-awareness, and you may notice that lately you're responding less, explaining less, observing more, and that's not detachment, that's discernment forming, and discernment is a spiritual muscle, it strengthens every time you choose not to engage with what doesn't deserve your energy. And listen to this, because the universe is also preparing you for a moment of recognition, not from the people who comment, but from someone who sees you clearly without needing explanation, someone whose presence feels grounding instead of invasive, whose curiosity feels respectful instead of judgmental, and that person may already be circling your life energetically, even if you haven't met them yet, drawn to the calm you carry, drawn to the way you live intentionally, and your heart needs this right now because you're learning to trust that being authentic will attract what's meant for you without effort. And don't scroll, because this is where the cliffhanger tightens. The more you remain unshaken by commentary, the more the universe rearranges circumstances to reflect that inner stability, opportunities align, connections deepen, noise fades, and one day soon, you'll notice that the comments either stop entirely or feel irrelevant, like echoes from a room you've already left, and that's when you'll understand, this phase wasn't about them at all, it was about you reclaiming authorship of your life. And listen to this as we close this part. You are not living like a label, you are living like someone who's awake, someone who's choosing depth over display, truth over trend, peace over performance, and the universe sees that, supports that, protects that. So don't scroll away from your own knowing, stay anchored, keep listening inward, because the quiet strength you're building right now is shaping everything that comes next. Don't scroll. Stay with me, listen to this carefully, because this message is still for you and your heart needs this right now. And what's unfolding at this stage is the quiet transformation that most people never talk about, the one that happens after you stop reacting but before the world notices you've changed, the part where your inner voice becomes louder than external noise, and you begin to recognize that the comments, the judgments, the unfinished sentences people throw at your life are losing their grip, not because they stopped happening, but because you stopped letting them define you. And listen to this, that shift is not accidental, it's divinely guided, it's the universe training you to stand in your own frequency without leaking energy into spaces that can't hold it. And your heart needs this right now because there's still a lingering question inside you asking, why me? Why do people feel the need to talk about my life? And the answer isn't punishment or coincidence, it's resonance. When your life begins to reflect alignment instead of approval seeking, it creates a contrast that unsettles people who are still negotiating with their truth. And don't scroll, because this is where awakening deepens into embodiment. Awakening isn't just realizing things intellectually, it's living differently even when it's uncomfortable. It's choosing peace even when explanation would feel easier, and lately you've been doing that, maybe without even realizing it. You've been letting silence speak, letting your choices stand on their own, and that takes strength, real strength, not the loud kind, but the grounded kind that doesn't need witnesses. And listen to this, the universe always tests embodiment by reintroducing familiar triggers, old patterns, recurring voices, to see if you'll react the same way or respond from growth. And the fact that you're pausing instead of spiraling, observing instead of engaging, is proof that something has fundamentally shifted inside you. And your heart needs this right now because growth can feel isolating before it feels empowering. There's a loneliness that comes with outgrowing the need to be understood by everyone, and that loneliness can tempt you to explain yourself just to feel connected again. But listen to this, connection built on self-betrayal never lasts. And the universe is protecting you from that by strengthening your inner anchor, and signs are Reinforcing this protection constantly, even if you don't consciously label them as signs, the way certain conversations fall flat now, the way certain comments feel irrelevant, the way your body relaxes when you choose not to engage, those are confirmations. And if you've been seeing numbers like 808 or 909 when you feel particularly centered, that's completion and inner authority activating. That's the universe saying, you've learned this lesson, now live it, and don't scroll, because soulmate energy is evolving alongside this inner work. The person meant to meet you at this stage of life isn't looking for someone to perform or prove themselves, they're looking for someone who knows who they are without needing commentary. Someone whose life speaks quietly but clearly, and this phase is shaping you into that presence. And listen to this, when you stop reacting to judgment, you create a vacuum, and that vacuum gets filled with alignment, with clarity, with people and opportunities that resonate with who you actually are, not who others think you should be. And your heart needs this right now because part of you might still feel exposed, like being talked about means being vulnerable, but spiritually, vulnerability without reaction is strength, it's the ability to be seen without being shaken, and that ability is rare, and the universe doesn't cultivate it lightly. And don't scroll, because here's the emotional truth that changes everything. The comments aren't following you because you're doing something wrong, they're following you because you're doing something right, because your life no longer blends into the background, because you're no longer easily categorized. And ambiguity threatens people who rely on labels to feel safe, and your refusal to fit neatly into their narrative forces them to confront that discomfort. And listen to this, you don't owe anyone clarity about your choices unless they're walking beside you with respect, curiosity, and care, and the universe is helping you feel the difference between those who deserve access and those who don't, and that discernment will shape your future relationships profoundly, because when soulmate energy arrives, it won't come with commentary, it will come with understanding, it will feel like relief, like recognition, like finally being met where you are instead of being analyzed from afar. And your heart needs this right now because you're learning to trust that being yourself is enough, that you don't need to curate your life to avoid misunderstanding, that misunderstanding is sometimes the cost of authenticity. And don't scroll, because this is where the tension softens into clarity. You may notice that the urge to check who's saying what fades, that your attention shifts inward, that you care more about how you feel than how you're perceived, and that's not withdrawal, that's self-respect consolidating. And listen to this, the universe always stabilizes self-respect before introducing expansion, because expansion without grounding becomes chaos, and grounding without expansion becomes stagnation, and you're finding the balance now, slowly, steadily. And here's the cliffhanger you're meant to sit with at the end of this part. Soon, very soon, there will be a moment where you're tempted to respond, to explain, to set the record straight publicly, and in that moment, your intuition will speak clearly, guiding you toward silence or action, and whichever choice aligns with peace, not ego, will be the right one. And when you choose alignment over reaction, the universe will confirm it in ways that feel undeniable, through calm, through unexpected support, through a sense of inner rightness that doesn't need applause. And your heart needs this right now. Because you are not being shaped for noise, you are being shaped for depth, for connection that feels safe, for a life that doesn't require constant defense. And as this part closes, remember this, being talked about is temporary, being anchored is transformative, and you are becoming anchored in a way that will carry you through everything that comes next. So don't scroll away from your own center, stay grounded, keep listening inward, because the universe isn't finished revealing what this strength is preparing you for. Don't scroll. Stay with me a little longer, listen to this all the way through, because this message is still for you and your heart needs this right now. And what's happening in this phase is something only people who are truly evolving ever experience, the moment when external noise no longer controls the direction of your inner world, even though it may still exist around you, and you're beginning to realize that the comments, the whispers, the half-finished judgments about how you live are losing their emotional grip, not because they stopped, but because you stopped feeding them. And listen to this, that is not numbness, that is sovereignty, that is the universe teaching you how to stand fully in yourself without outsourcing your worth to anyone else's opinion. And your heart needs this right now because there was a time when those words would have kept you awake at night, replaying conversations, rewriting explanations in your head. Wondering how to be more acceptable, more understandable, more invisible, but something has shifted, and you may not even be able to pinpoint when it happened. You just know that lately your nervous system doesn't spike the same way, your chest doesn't tighten as quickly, your mind doesn't spiral as far, and listen to this carefully, that calm is earned, that calm is the result of choosing yourself over and over again in small, quiet moments. And the universe has been watching those choices closely, because those choices determine what kind of future you're ready for. And don't scroll, because this is where the deeper lesson reveals itself. The comments were never meant to teach you how to respond to others, they were meant to teach you how to respond to yourself, how to self-soothe instead of self-criticize, how to ground instead of justify, how to trust instead of perform. And your heart needs this right now because you are stepping into a version of yourself that doesn't require witnesses to feel real, and that version is powerful in a way that doesn't seek attention but attracts alignment. And listen to this, the universe often allows small forms of social friction right before a major energetic upgrade, because friction shows you where you're still attached, where you're still seeking approval, and where you're finally free, and you're noticing that your attachment is dissolving, that your need to explain is fading, and that's not you becoming cold, that's you becoming clear. And clarity changes everything, especially when it comes to love, because soulmate connections don't grow in environments of self-doubt, they grow in spaces of self-trust, and your heart needs this right now because the way you're learning to hold yourself is the way someone else will eventually hold you too, with respect, patience, and quiet understanding. And listen to this, the person meant for you will never feel compelled to comment on how you live, because they'll feel included in it. They won't analyze your choices from the outside. They'll walk beside you on the inside. And the universe is using this season to help you feel that difference deeply so you never settle for less again. And don't scroll, because signs are still appearing to support this transition. Maybe you're seeing 10-10 when you feel especially grounded, signaling alignment between who you are and where you're headed. Maybe 12. 12 shows up reminding you that expansion is happening in layers, not all at once, and your heart needs this right now because those signs aren't about predicting events, they're about reinforcing trust. Trust in your timing, trust in your growth, trust in your ability to handle what's coming next without losing yourself. And listen to this, something subtle but important is happening in your emotional landscape. You're becoming less reactive and more responsive, less defensive and more discerning, and that shift will ripple outward into every area of your life, your relationships, your work, your boundaries, and yes, the way people interact with you. Because energy teaches people how to treat you without words, and as your energy stabilizes, the commentary will either soften or disappear, not because you demanded it, but because it no longer finds a place to land. And your heart needs this right now because you're learning that peace is not the absence of noise, it's the presence of self-trust, and self-trust doesn't argue, it doesn't explain, it doesn't compete, it simply is. And listen to this, the universe is preparing you for a moment of recognition, not from the people who comment, but from life itself, a moment where you'll look around and realize you're living in a way that feels honest, unforced, and aligned, and that